Your grandmother had a microwave that outlasted 2 marriages, 1 house fire, and a cross-country move. It sat on the same counter for 22 years. It had 4 buttons. It did one thing. And it never stopped working until she decided she wanted something with a clock. Now think about your last microwave. When did the control panel die? When did the turntable motor start grinding? When did you look up the repair cost, see that it was 60% of a new unit, and just throw it away? You are not imagining this. You are not unlucky. Your microwave is not defective. It was designed to fail. There is a term that economists use for this: planned obsolescence. But that phrase has been so thoroughly absorbed into the consumer consciousness that it's lost all of its teeth. It sounds abstract, like something that happens to someone else. So let's use a more precise term: engineered dependency. The appliance industry, and the microwave is simply the most instructive example, has spent the last 30 years systematically replacing durable mechanical components with cheap, proprietary electronics. Not because the electronics are better. Not because you demanded them. But because a microwave that lasts 20 years is, from a corporate revenue standpoint, a catastrophic product. This documentary is about how that happened. Who decided it? What laws enabled it? And what it is costing you, in dollars, in waste, and in control over objects you believed you owned. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what was built. The microwave oven entered American homes in 1967 when a Manna Corporation, then a subsidiary of Raytheon, released the Radarange at a retail price of $495. Adjusted for inflation, that is roughly $4,400 today. It was enormous. It was ugly. And it was nearly indestructible. The first generation of consumer microwaves was built on a principle of mechanical simplicity. The magnetron, the component that actually generates the microwave radiation, was a robust vacuum tube technology derived directly from World War II radar systems. The controls were rotary dials, a timer, a power selector. The turntable was driven by a synchronous motor with the mechanical life expectancy of a ceiling fan. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, manufacturers like Panasonic, Sharp, and Samsung had entered the American market with more affordable units, bringing average prices down to $200 to $300. But the core architecture remained the same: analog controls, mechanical timers, a magnetron designed for a 10 to 15-year operational lifespan. Consumer Reports conducted appliance reliability surveys throughout this period. Their data from the early 1980s showed microwaves lasting an average of 14.3 years before requiring any significant service. The components that did wear out, door switches, turntable motors, magnetrons, were individually replaceable. A factory-certified repair technician could source a new magnetron for a 1982 Sharp unit for approximately $35 and extend the appliance's working life by another decade. This was not an accident of engineering. It was the result of manufacturing philosophy. The dominant industrial model of mid-20th century appliance manufacturing was built on what historians of technology call serviceability doctrine, the idea that a product sold to a household should be reparable by trained technicians using standardized parts, for a cost substantially below replacement. This kept repair economies viable. It kept consumer expenditure predictable. And it produced objects that accumulated value over time rather than shedding it. The magnetron in your grandmother's Manna Radarange could, in principle, be tested with a multimeter, diagnosed by a trained technician in 20 minutes, and replaced with a standardized component that shipped from 3 different suppliers. The whole repair ecosystem, independent service centers, parts wholesalers, technical manuals, was designed to extend the functional life of the product indefinitely. That ecosystem is now almost entirely gone. The pivot did not happen overnight. It happened in 2 overlapping waves, and if you want to understand the appliance you will buy next year, you need to understand both. Wave 1, the China manufacturing migration, 1995 to 2007. In 1995, following the expansion of the World Trade Organization framework and the normalization of trade relations with China, American and Japanese appliance manufacturers began an aggressive offshoring campaign. The logic was straightforward: A magnetron manufactured in Guangdong province costs 60 to 70% less than a comparable unit produced in a Tennessee or Illinois facility. But the cost savings came with a structural compromise. To hit the new price targets, to sell a microwave for $59 at Walmart, which became a key strategic objective for manufacturers competing for shelf placement, component quality was downgraded across the board. The magnetrons in entry-level units manufactured after 2002 were built to approximately half the operational lifespan of their predecessors. The capacitors, the components that store and release the electrical charge that powers the magnetron, were sourced from the cheapest available suppliers, many of whom were later implicated in what became known as the capacitor plague. Between 1999 and 2007, a Taiwanese capacitor manufacturer stole and improperly replicated an electrolyte formula, producing tens of millions of capacitors that failed prematurely. These capacitors ended up in products from Dell, Apple, and yes, inside the control boards of virtually every major appliance brand. Whirlpool, which by 2005 had consolidated control over the Maytag, Genair, and KitchenAid brands in addition to its own label, saw its internal service data shift dramatically. Appliances that had averaged 12 to 15-year operational lifespans before 2000 were now showing first failure rates within 5 to 8 years. The company had the data. The data was not shared with consumers. Wave 2, the digital control migration, 2003 to 2015. Simultaneously, manufacturers began replacing analog mechanical controls with digital touchpad systems, not because consumers demanded them, but because the unit cost of a digital control board was lower than a high-quality analog timer assembly, and because digital controls created a new failure mode that was, from a corporate perspective, far more profitable. Here is the key insight. When a rotary timer fails, you replace the timer. It is a discrete, mechanical component. When a digital control board fails, which it will, typically within 5 to 9 years, because the board is populated with cheap surface mount capacitors and microcontrollers sourced from the same low-cost supply chains, you are faced with a different repair economics entirely. A replacement control board for a Samsung MS-19M 8020TG, one of the company's best-selling over-the-range microwave units, retailed in 2023 at $189 through Samsung's authorized parts portal. The microwave itself retails for $289. The labor to install the board, if you use an authorized Samsung service center, runs between $80 and $120. You will do that math yourself. The cynical read of this situation is that manufacturers simply got greedy. That is partially true, but it is not the complete picture, and the incomplete picture lets them escape a more serious charge. The deliberate fragility of modern appliances is not incidental. It is structural, and it serves a very specific financial purpose. In 2019, Whirlpool Corporation, the largest appliance manufacturer in the world by revenue, controlling roughly 30% of the American market, reported $20.4 billion in gross sales. But buried in their annual report, in the segment data for North America, was a number that deserved far more attention. Service parts and accessories revenue had grown by 23% over the previous 5 years, outpacing appliance unit sales growth of just 4% in the same period. They are selling you a product. And then they are selling you the product again, one component at a time. The control board failure is the most elegant mechanism because it is nearly invisible to the consumer at the moment of purchase. You cannot see a cheap capacitor. You cannot test the expected lifespan of a touchpad membrane at a Best Buy display. You experience the failure 3 years later, standing in your kitchen at 7 in the morning, and the microwave simply does not respond. The display is dark. The unit is, for all practical purposes, a box. Samsung, LG, and Whirlpool have all moved aggressively toward what they now market as smart appliances, units with Wi-Fi connectivity, companion app integration, and cloud-dependent diagnostics. The LG ThinQ platform, launched in 2018, connects LG's refrigerators, ovens, dishwashers, and microwaves to a central application that allows the company to push firmware updates, monitor usage data, and, this detail is rarely highlighted in the marketing materials, remotely diagnose and in some cases remotely disable features on a unit you have already paid for. This is not science fiction. In 2021, LG confirmed that certain smart appliance features were tied to their cloud infrastructure, meaning that if LG chose to sunset a platform or discontinue a server, as they are not contractually prohibited from doing, the connected features of your appliance could cease to function. You purchased the hardware. LG retained effective control of part of its operational logic. The appliance is no longer a product. It is a subscription you paid for in advance, without being told the subscription has a term limit. At this point, a reasonable person asks, where was the government in all of this? The answer is complicated and more damning than simple regulatory capture. In 2013, the U.S. Department of Energy finalized new energy efficiency standards for residential microwave ovens under the authority of the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. The ruling, published in the Federal Register as docket number 2010 BT STD 0013, set new minimum efficiency thresholds for standby power consumption and magnetron energy conversion, effective 2016. On the surface, this was a genuine consumer and environmental benefit. Standby power draw, the electricity a microwave consumes while doing nothing, was capped at 1.0 watt for units with a connected door. This would save, the DOE estimated, approximately $2 billion in energy costs over 30 years. But buried in the engineering requirements was a consequence the DOE's own analysis acknowledged and then minimized. Meeting the new efficiency standards at consumer price points was, as the final rule admitted in Section 4.c.3, most economically achievable through the adoption of variable power inverter technology and digital control platforms. Translation: the efficiency standards, as written, effectively mandated the digital control architecture. They made the cheap analog systems that were robust and repairable compliant only at a cost premium that manufacturers passed directly to entry-level products, by substituting cheaper digital boards that met the letter of the efficiency requirement while dramatically reducing product longevity. The DOE was told this. In the public comment period for the 2013 rule, the Appliance Standards Awareness Project and multiple independent repair associations submitted comments specifically flagging that the proposed standards, combined with the price pressure of retail competition, would accelerate the adoption of low-quality digital control systems in entry-level appliances. The comments were acknowledged. They were not incorporated into the final rule. The regulation that was supposed to save you money on your energy bill simultaneously accelerated the collapse of appliance longevity. Both things happened. Only one of them was advertised. Here is what this means for you, in dollars and days. In 1985, the average American household spent approximately $340 on a microwave oven, roughly $950 in 2024 dollars. That appliance, under the reliability standards of its era, was expected to function for 14 to 17 years. That is a per-year cost of approximately $56 to $68. In 2024, the average American household spends between $80 and $180 on a microwave, significantly less in nominal dollars. But that unit, under current failure patterns documented by iFixit, Consumer Reports, and J.D. Power, has an expected first major failure window of 5 to 8 years. If you choose not to repair, which, as demonstrated, the repair economics nearly always compel, you replace it. Over a 17-year period, you will buy approximately 2 to 3 microwaves. At the midpoint of that range, your per-year cost is now $62 to $93. You are spending more per year for a worse product. And you are generating, on average, 58 pounds of electronic waste per household per decade from appliances alone, a number tracked by the EPA's Electronics Environmental Benefits Calculator. The trap is tighter than simple replacement cost. It is the trap of inaccessibility. iFixit, the consumer repair advocacy organization, conducts annual repairability audits of major consumer electronics and appliances. Their 2023 appliance report found that for 71% of microwaves tested from the 5 major brands, replacement control boards were either unavailable through third-party suppliers, available only through the manufacturer at cost-prohibitive prices, or lacked publicly accessible wiring diagrams that would allow independent technicians to perform board-level diagnosis. You cannot fix it. You cannot have it fixed. You can only replace it. And the company that sold it to you is waiting with a new one. This is not new. This is the playbook. And it has been run before, successfully, invisibly, completely. In the 1920s, electric light bulbs lasted an average of 2,500 hours. Then, in December 1924, the heads of Osram, Philips, General Electric, and several other major manufacturers met in Geneva and formed the Phoebus cartel. Their stated purpose was to standardize the electric lamp industry. Their actual mechanism, documented in cartel records uncovered decades later and now housed at the Hagley Museum in Delaware, was to set a mandatory maximum lifespan of 1,000 hours for member companies' products. Any manufacturer whose bulbs lasted longer was fined. They engineered failure by committee. They called it standardization. It worked for 17 years. The Phoebus cartel is not an anomaly. It is a prototype. The printer industry ran the same playbook with ink cartridges and proprietary chip codes that signal empty cartridges before they are empty. The automotive industry ran it with OBD2 diagnostic codes locked behind dealer software. The smartphone industry ran it with batteries that degraded by design and operating system updates that slowed older hardware, for which Apple paid a $113 million settlement to 34 states in 2021, without admitting wrongdoing. The pattern is always the same: voluntary first, where manufacturers find it profitable to build for failure, then encouraged, through regulatory frameworks that favor the established players, then effectively mandated, when the economics of scale make the durable alternative non-competitive. The microwave is in the middle phase. It is not yet mandated. But the infrastructure for mandate is already in place. Smart appliance connectivity requirements are being discussed at the DOE level as part of the Grid Responsive Appliances Initiative, which would reward manufacturers, through rebate programs administered to consumers, for selling appliances that communicate with the electrical grid. The reward structure will favor the connected, proprietary, non-repairable product. It will be called an incentive. So what do you actually do? The first answer is the most counterintuitive one: buy older. On the secondary market, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and local appliance liquidators, you can find commercial-grade microwave units from the late 1990s and early 2000s that were built to a higher durability standard than anything currently on a retail shelf. The Panasonic NN series from the 2000 to 2008 production window, specifically models using the Panasonic inverter magnetron rather than a digital control board, are consistently cited by independent appliance technicians as among the most repairable residential units ever produced. Parts remain in circulation. Schematics are publicly available. For new purchases, look at commercial-grade equipment. Amana Commercial, now a subsidiary of Manitowoc Food Service, still manufactures high-volume restaurant microwaves built to substantially higher longevity standards than their residential counterparts. The Amana RCS 10TS, a commercial medium-duty unit, retails for approximately $350, carries a parts availability guarantee from Manitowoc, and is engineered to a 10-year commercial duty cycle, meaning a residential household will, in practice, run it for 20-plus years. For anything you already own, register your product with iFixit.com, which maintains the largest publicly available database of appliance repair manuals and third-party parts sourcing guides. Before you replace your current microwave, get a diagnosis. The most common failure points: door interlock switches, turntable drive motors, and high-voltage capacitors, are still repairable on most units manufactured before 2018, and replacement parts from non-manufacturer sources are often available for $15 to $40. The repair economy still exists. It is simply not advertised. The decline of your microwave's lifespan is not a mystery. It is not the result of changing technology. It is the result of a deliberate manufacturing strategy, enabled by supply chain economics, accelerated by regulatory frameworks with misaligned incentives, and consummated by a retail environment that never once told you that the product you were buying was designed to fail before the warranty expired. You were not sold an appliance. You were enrolled in a replacement cycle. The purchase was the entry fee. The question most people bring to this topic is, why don't they make things like they used to? That is the wrong question. Because they still know how. The commercial kitchen down the street has a microwave that has run 8 hours a day for 11 years without a service call. The engineering knowledge exists. The manufacturing capacity exists. The right question is, who decided you weren't worth building it for? And once you ask that question, the answer is in every product recall notice, every energy efficiency ruling, every quarterly earnings report that celebrates growth in parts and service revenue. They decided. And they assumed you would never notice. If you want to keep owning what you buy, subscribe, because this channel is the manual they never included in the box.